Brilliant. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's webinar. I can begin to see you all kind of coming in to join us this morning, so that's great. We're delighted to have you with us this morning. Hope you're all safe and well halfway through our level 5 lockdown, where we are nearly there. Christmas is on the horizon and all that. As usual, if you can hear me, if you can see our holding screen, I'd really appreciate people popping on the chat just to let us know that it's all working on your side. Brilliant. Thanks, Anthony. Really appreciate that. Hi, Emer. Good morning. Hi, Liam. Brilliant. Okay, so you can all hear us. So welcome back to those of us who are with you or those of you who are with us on a regular basis. Welcome back. But also, good morning. We have a lot of new people this morning, so delighted to have you joining with us for the first time. So welcome to this morning. And welcome to the next webinar in our Trust Insight series. So this morning's topic is all going to be about virtual onboarding and providing connection and community for new hires. My name is Fania Stoney. I'm going to be your host for today's session. I'm joined by my colleague Cathal Divley, who's going to be running the conversation, and we're delighted to welcome Jeffrey Moran from IBM, who's going to be joining Cathal in that conversation. Cathal's going to be doing a bit more of the formal intros later. And before we jump into this morning's webinar, I just want to give, especially for Great Place to Work clients, a heads up on a webinar we're running next week. So next week, myself and Anthony are actually going to be taking the hour to talk about the culture audits. I know a lot of you are mid-submission at the moment. And we're beginning to see some really interesting trends come out on the back of COVID-19 and those COVID-19 responses. So we wanted to take some time and take you through that and give you some hints and tips for anybody who's still submitting their culture audits this year. And also give you some sight on some best practice that we're seeing as well. Which leads me on to my next announcement, which is really exciting. We've got our Great Practice booklet is actually launching next week. So do keep an eye out for that. I think Marina will probably correct me, but I think it's next Tuesday. So keep an eye out on the channels for that best practice booklet coming out next week. Okay, just a small bit of housekeeping. The recording will be available afterwards. There are no slides today. It is going to be a conversation, and we really mean that. So we really would encourage you guys to get your questions in. We're going to let the chat go for kind of 25 minutes, half an hour, and then we will have some good time for Q&A. So please do keep those questions coming into us. And yeah, because that is going to be a slightly shorter session today, so we should be wrapping up at around 11:15, so giving you plenty of time to get ready for the next 11 a.m. Zoom meeting. That's it from me. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Cathal to get going on this morning's webinar. So Cathal, over to you.
Morning, folks. Hope we're all well. Thank you very much to Fania and all the team and Great Place to Work for organising this webinar, and indeed all the webinars we've been doing since March. So there's lots of interest in this morning's webinar around virtual onboarding. I guess it's either something that you've been doing some of in the last few months, or perhaps it's something you're planning towards in terms of 2021. And I'm absolutely delighted to have a really good friend of mine on the call today, Jeffrey Moran. So myself and Jeff went to college together many years ago. Jeff is sales trainer, learning consultant, communications coach with IBM. And look, what Jeff will be sharing today is IBM's approach to virtual onboarding. And we're conscious that many companies on the call already have an approach, perhaps, in terms of how you do onboarding. So we're going to share IBM's approach. We're not putting it forward as the perfect solution in terms of virtual onboarding, but definitely we have some good ideas and good stimulus for everyone this morning. So also feel free to post into the chat your own approach currently in onboarding and what's working and what's not. Jeff, I know there's lots of Zoom fatigue kicking in at this stage in the year, so we might start it off a bit light, if that's all right, Jeff. Sure. You know, it's been 2020, the year of the buzzwords, if you like. So we might share 3 of our favorite buzzwords. So from me, I've always liked vis-a-vis. Going forward is a favorite, and the year that's in it, I think you're on mute is certainly a buzzword that's landed with me. Any thoughts on buzzwords?
Well, I love pivot. I think pivot's a big one this year. And the new normal. And I love blue sky thinking as well.
Blue sky thinking. Brilliant.
Thanks, Cathal, for having me on today.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. I see you've strategically placed the bookshelf behind you as well, so it's good to know that you're reading
Yeah,
books. That's
I just put that in today for today's call.
excellent. Yeah. Good to see. Good to see. So, Jeff, I think in terms of intro, you might give everyone a sense of your career history in IBM over the last few years, the sort of roles you've had that's taken you into your current role.
Yeah, sure. So before IBM, I'm in sales and marketing for 18 years in a range of different SMEs. I started off actually in the football industry in Ireland and then went into digital marketing, digital media, mobile technology. Worked with O2 for a few years and then joined IBM about 7.5 years ago now. And my first 5 years were in sales, working with clients all across Europe, UK, Europe, enterprise clients, large clients, and actually we work virtually most of the time anyway. So I work in the digital sales part of IBM. So we work virtually with clients, email, social media, all that kind of stuff, virtual selling. But I travel from time to time to clients. But I'd always had an interest in learning and development and training and sales training. And I had completed some qualifications and my train the trainer before joining the IBM, and I took up an opportunity. Really, there was a vacancy within the L&D department of IBM 3 years ago now, and I got it, and I'm there ever since. I'm the new hire training manager, so I train all the new hires coming into IBM. But I also am passionate about communications and sales training, so I work across IBM on those skill sets. So that's just a little bit about me, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. And look, it's been a crazy year in terms of workplaces, individuals plunged into a new way of working for many of us, and it's been really interesting watching the reactions on the part of companies to that new way of working. One thing that struck me was the working from home pledge that IBM put in place. Would you mind sharing with everyone what that is?
Yeah, so like every single company out there, back in March, IBM had to move from predominantly what was an office environment to a home environment. So we had to move 350,000 employees across the world, 175 different countries, 1,300 locations, and we had to move all of them to their home office. And it took about 10 business days, I believe, to do that. But really, in truth, actually, most people were fully functional within 48 hours within IBM, because we have these collaboration tools, and we're blessed with collaboration tools and virtual tools. Everything's on the cloud these days, so we could work pretty quickly. But what I would say, Cathal, is that the working from home was a pretty new thing for us, most of us in IBM. And the work from home pledge actually came from an employee. I don't know where, because it's grown so much now, but an employee somewhere said, I'd like to kind of, as this is so new for us, I would like some of us to pledge to be kinder, to be more respectful, to be not always camera ready, and to be kind to others, it's okay for distractions to happen behind your, kids or the dog barking. So it kind of grew from that, and then has now become a company policy, HR policy for the company. So it's called the IBM pledge, COVID pledge. And thousands and hundreds of thousands of people have kind of pledged for these. So I think the values are really important. I'll give you an example, Cathal, how it comes into maybe my life. So one of my colleagues in the L&D department is a carer. So he lives with his auntie, who's 90, and she has dementia, and she has carers coming in 3 times a day. And so my colleague Des lives with her, and is obviously with the lockdown, older people are vulnerable. So one of my pledges is just to check in with Des every day and say, how you doing? How's things going at home? Never mind work, just how's things? How are you keeping? So it's just that kind of caring about people. I think it's a great thing that the IBM have done here, and as I said, it's come from employees,
That's really interesting, Jeff. So an employee idea generated, which is great to see, ownership on the part of employees, and then the fact that you're kind of calling it out in a purposeful way. Here's a practice I think that's really, really good to see, right? It's a good reminder to us as managers as well, in terms of, people's situations, I guess, are nuanced and different. So that's great to see, Jeff. And in terms of onboarding then, specifically, over the last few months, how many people have we onboarded? And even before that, Jeff, interested in your and IBM's mindset around what is it you're looking to achieve in terms of the onboarding approach that you have in place?
Okay. Yeah. So I had a look at the figures last night, and we have hired 65 people since March from 15 different countries across Europe. Okay. So 15 different nationalities. And often the people that we hire, when we hire, we offer permanent employment. Okay. So they have to pay their taxes in Ireland. So they have to actually relocate to Ireland often. And some of them were stuck in their home country, Spain, France, Portugal. They were literally just stuck there. So we had to ship everything out to them, their laptops, accessories, all that kind of stuff. So that was a big logistical effort, So that was one element of our virtual onboarding, is the kind of logistic, the equipment. But we typically do in digital sales European head office, because that's where I work. It's a European head office, and we've approximately about 600 people working in the office from all different parts of Europe. We serve 21 different markets across the Europe, Cathal, with about 22 different languages. So during this period, as I said, we typically run a 7-day face-to-face in a training room or different training rooms. Face-to-face induction program. Okay, so we obviously have to change everything to virtual, and we did. But I think in the early days, we were very conscious about maybe giving the same experience to the virtual new hires, we call them. And we were trying to kind of just, almost copy the face-to-face version of training. And, that just didn't work. We were doing days from 9:30 to 5, and people were just exhausted, So I think we've definitely changed our method over the months. And I think we listened to feedback from the new hires. And for me, really what came out from doing all that training was that the connection is really important. It's the connection and sense of belonging to the company that you want to give to new hires. It's not necessarily all about educate, or constant messages. It's that connection piece that we do every day with the new hires that I think is valued. And that's the feedback we were getting from people. It's just great to see people or to meet other people, because all I know is my team and my manager. So it's great to meet other people within the business. So that's some kind of takeaways for us,
Great, Jeff. And it's so, okay, so the importance of that sense of belonging, that sense of connection, that I suppose in a way you're almost joining a community, if you like, is really important. So let's say I'm one of those new hires, God forbid you ever decided to hire me, Jeff, right? Talk to me about, talk to me about the approach. How does it look? Is it a week? How long does it take? All of that.
Yeah, so as I said, it's 7 days. But we do 9:30 to 12:30, and then a break. We take lots of breaks now, and then we might do one more session in the afternoon. So it's 9:30 to maybe 2:30, instead of a full day, just really to reduce that screen fatigue, And I'm also passionate, Cathal, about learning formats. So I'd ask everyone out there who's into training or facilitation or talks, do you really need to show a 50-page PowerPoint deck on a virtual training? I think the mistake people are taking really is they're trying to replicate the face-to-face version online. And so we do lots of breakout activities. We do class discussions, we do team activities, we break them up into different groups. We do virtual design thinking. We use a wonderful tool called Mural, and we do different sessions on that. So lots of different formats. That's really my passion, is if the whole 7 days was speakers talking about, through PowerPoint, it would be really dull. I mean, we bring in 15 subject matter experts, Cathal, across the week to talk about all different parts of the business. So mission, values, culture, and then the business overview, strategy, where the company's going. And I really encourage those 15 people that come in to use different formats, learning formats, you know. So I think that's the key, you know, to doing successful induction program.
So different formats, Jeff, to keep people engaged, I guess, and different faces, different individuals is important, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know engagement is another buzzword, if you want to
Yeah.
say that, but you really have to think about everyone's situation, and that's kind of evolved as well. Not everyone has an office like this that they can go just lock themselves away in. Some people are in shared accommodation, and some people have children at home or after school activities to get on with. So I think it's just appreciation of people, and that approach helps, you know, when you're designing your education.
Yeah. And for yourself then, right? So a number of people on the call, Jeff, will actually be leading up the onboarding approaches within their companies, or doing the onboarding, if you like. How do you manage your own preparation and your own personal energy around it, given it's online?
Okay, so there's two things there. Preparation is key. So I think actually the virtual training or onboarding takes a lot more time to prepare for, because literally every minute has to be prepared. So the preparation, we might take 2 weeks preparation and 1 week delivery, typically. There's no doubt that the energy, Cathal, from virtual delivery is it's much more energy consuming than face to face, I find. Because literally you're just looking at a little green dot on your screen, and the faces. If you can see the faces of your class, I always try and encourage people to put their cameras on. It's not always possible for some people. They might not be in a position, and that's fine. That comes back to our pledge. We don't ask people to put their cameras on, but I try to encourage it, just to have that discussion, you know. So yeah, that's those two things. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to kind of really kind of, I suppose, be clear with everyone, Jeff, around what it looks like in terms of the onboarding piece. Like, give us a sense of a day or even a couple of days. Like, what specific?
So yeah, so we run a 7-day induction program. So it's really just to give them an overview of the company, a little bit about the different business units within the company, and I cover some soft skills. I do a presentation skills workshop with them, and we cover the fundamentals of selling with them. In a workshop format, we use Mural for that design thinking thing. Sometimes we give them resources like videos or white papers to read, and then we have a discussion. So it's all just different formats. And then we have those 15 subject matter experts that come in and talk about their experience and their expertise. So yeah, it's quite different every day, you know. That's how the makeup of their class is.
And going back to the early part of the conversation, Jeff, where you have been in a unique enough position that you've actually done the sales role, if you like. So for many people that are coming in and being onboarded, you've experienced their role. How, I suppose, how important is that, or how useful is that in terms of the onboarding?
It's really useful for me as a trainer to have you know, walk the walk, basically, and to kind of, when I speak about sales training and I speak about sales methodologies and approaches, it's really helpful to have that background, and it you know, builds great credibility. So yeah, it's good to have that in a sales environment, at least. Yeah.
And thanks, Jeff. And current approach, so you've been doing it now a number of months. Is it 65 people that have been onboarded across many different countries? As you move into 2021, what's working well that you'll absolutely take with you, and where's the room for opportunity? What would you look to change, perhaps?
So obviously I'd love to get back to face-to-face training. I think you just get so much more feedback and organic discussion in face-to-face, but we'll see. I probably don't anticipate that we will go back to face-to-face training until the second half, at least, of next year. Maybe not at all next year. I don't know. I think what works well for us is that understanding of creating community and connection, a discussion piece, the different learning formats, I think that really works well for us. Taking that into next year, Cathal. There's lots of things we can improve. Listen, I've seen out there lots of companies are sending little care packs to their new hires, little reminders just to say hi, thinking of you. I love that. So might look at that maybe for next year as well, or maybe an end of year kind of message in the post to employees. But I think it's just continue to look at, like we it's a cliche, but we do have an agile approach to it. So every month we make small changes on the feedback from the last month, you know. So it's an evolving thing all the time that we manage, you know.
Okay, so constantly looking to improve, build on it. Certainly the connection piece is something you'll take with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I'll give you an example, Cathal. In our last month that we did new hire program, 2 of the participants, we had a class of 16, and 2 of the participants lost relations in the week that we were running the program. So one person lost their granny and one person lost their auntie, and neither of them could travel to the funeral due to lockdown. So, you know, we just needed to connect with those people and with the group and say, you know, unfortunately, we've had some bereavements in the group this week. Let's just have a chat. So let's forget about the content for the next hour and the education piece. Let's just have a chat and a connection. Is everyone doing okay? You know, so I think that's really important, just to kind of understand people's situations, you know, and to change approach if you need to.
Wow. So that's what a great message to give to new hires, right? So the importance of their first experience with the company. They can remember, like people will remember those first interactions, those first experiences, and you know, in situations, personal situations that people are experiencing that are difficult, you have the flex in the approach to be able to say, look, let's actually just get together and have a conversation.
Yeah, so that's what I talk about, that connection and community.
Yeah,
you know, you have to understand people's situations and be flexible in times like these, you know, because it's just not normal times, you know. None of this is normal for any of us.
No, of course. Or the new normal, as we like to we like to call it. That wasn't any of our buzzwords. So an eclectic mix of companies on the call, Jeff, right? So it's a big, small, different industries. Somebody sitting down with a blank sheet of paper, say, right, we need to plan our onboarding. It's going to be virtual. Any tips, advice that you'd share with people?
Okay, so number 1, connection, community. It's all about those things. It's not about education. People won't remember everything you give them in terms of, you know, when they started in their first 6 months of the job, they hardly remember all the information. So connection and community. Number 2, learning formats. So think of the learning formats. Do you really have to show your PowerPoint deck for 50 minutes and talk through it? And I say that because, you know, if we were to show a PowerPoint deck here, Cathal, we're showing a deck, we're asking questions. So people are cognitively doing different things. They're looking at a deck and you're also asking a question. And another tip I would say, Cathal, in terms of facilitation is, because for me, training and virtual training is all about communications, you know. So as a facilitator, you have to embrace the silence. So when you ask a question, you have to allow the audience to hear the question, reflect on the question, and then answer the question. So that takes a couple of seconds, you know. So yeah. if you don't allow for that silence, I call it embrace the silence. Yeah. What happens is you end up answering your own question. So the value of asking the question in the first place has been lost. So I think that's really important to embrace the silence, you know.
Great tips, Jeff. Some people are naturally good at embracing silence. Is it something that can be taught? So I'm thinking about these subject matter experts that because I know you're comfortable with silence, right? Because we've been friends in silence for many, many years. But the subject matter experts that come in, like, is everyone comfortable with allowing the silence to be there? Can it be taught, or?
No, it's very awkward for most people. This whole the virtual communication is really awkward. And if there's a couple of seconds of silence, people just jump in straight away and they answer their own question, as I said. So, I mean, another tip, Cathal, would be, you know, when you have those dreaded words, I'm going to share my deck now. I'm going to share my presentation for the next 50 minutes. You can see the audience go, oh, you know. So a little tip for you is show a little and then get out. Okay. So show maybe 5 minutes of your presentation deck and then get out of the deck, come back to the screen and just have a chat like we're having today. Okay. And ask a question, embrace the silence when you're asking the question.
So not 350 slides?
Nope.
No. No. Okay. Wow. Jeff, there's lots of questions coming in from everyone, which is brilliant to see. So Fanny, do you want to pose some of the questions that come through there in the chat?
The only piece I'll add to the embracing the silence one is, you know, when you go for the silence and goes, sorry, Jeff, is your technology still working or is there a lag? Or it's like, no, I'm just enjoying the silence right now. So, yeah.
we have no patience as human beings. No patience. Yeah. You know, we're like, you know, tell me, I've asked a question. But with virtual, it's really different. It's so different. Yeah.
There's lots of questions coming in. I'm going to give people a couple of seconds to keep them coming in, but I'm just going to show you this. We ran a LinkedIn poll last week. Now I'm going back to PowerPoint, but you know, it's all about blending, right? It's all about different formats. But I thought this was quite interesting. So what's the main objective of your current onboarding approach towards new hires, right? So this kind of went out to our LinkedIn community. And you can see there, so 36% making it about the organizational culture, 32% I think aligning with your own piece, Jeff, there around connecting people together, and 28% educating them about the organization, and then 4% actually only talking about the role, right? So, you know, it's kind of good to see that spread coming in there.
But the education piece might still be a bit too high.
Yeah, bit too telling, too much telling going on.
Too much telling, exactly.
Yeah. And that's actually still live. So anybody who's on the webinar today, they can go and find it on our LinkedIn and give us their thoughts on it as well. Okay, so a couple of base questions first. There's a question from Andy. The work from home pledge, do employees have to opt into it?
Nope. No, it's completely optional.
Yeah.
But hundreds of thousands have.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that idea of it coming from employees and being from the bottom up has really kind of helped that buy-in, hasn't it?
Exactly. This isn't IBM telling us we have to adopt the pledge. It's come from the employees, the grassroots, if you want to call it, you know?
Yeah. Okay, there's a couple on the kind of, you know, different formats and you know, so Hannah has asked, should all training be delivered live, or can you deliver kind of an asynchronous version of the onboarding and still be successful in that?
So I believe you can do a mix, I think, but I believe everything should be. I think live is great, because I think with the pre-recorded, and I have done some pre-recorded webinars, you miss out on that interaction. It's kind of more telling than that interaction piece. So when you're doing something live, you can show a little and then get out and ask some questions. So I think live is great, but in the certain circumstances, maybe pre-recording. If you have a very big audience, I did a talk with 500 IBMers globally back in March around digital sales, and we pre-recorded that just purely for the logistic purposes, you know, of showing that, you know. Of
actually getting it out there to people, Couple of questions. There's a question from Deirdre and a question in from Liam. Do you have an ideal number of people you'd have for kind of, you know, how many, is there too many, is there too few? What's the kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say ideally 20 is the max that you want to have in any one new hire induction group. I think once it gets over that, what you then start seeing is people have reservations around speaking in bigger groups. They're not as likely to talk and to speak up around topics. They're more easy to hide, go off camera, that type of thing. So I personally like smaller groups. So so certainly around 20 maximum. We had 16 last month, and it was a lovely group, just a lovely size, you know.
Yeah, there's a couple, Christine and Liam both saying that, you know, they may have up to 40, or there might be a larger group, and, you know, is it a case of spreading the load a little bit, getting more people involved?
Yeah, maybe have a think about running 2 different classes with 2 different facilitators or something like that, or running 2 different times of day, for example, 20 and 20, because I think 40 is a lot for those 40 people to get that connection that you're talking about. you know, it's just so much easier to say if there's 40 people, the intros take a long time, and just to kind of be distracted with other things, you know, so maybe smaller groups work better.
And I think this comes back to what you're talking about earlier, this idea of the ambition of the process, right? So for you guys, it is the connection piece. The connection is at the heart of it. So if you're trying to facilitate that connection, having X amount of people sitting and listening and looking at a PowerPoint, it's not going to work for you guys. You know, it's not going to work for the approach that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Got a question in from Holly. Hi, Holly. So she was saying that the logistics piece is actually a bit of a challenge for them. So they've got HR team, they're offsite, they're full time. They're, you know, how are you managing welcome packs, laptops for new hires, kind of, you know, all of the logistical pieces, I suppose, and then also running all of this. So is it two teams? Is it, you know, how do you kind of spread that load, I suppose, internally?
It is two teams for us. So I look after the training and education part of things. We do have another logistical team. We have a hiring team. We have a team that also looks after the logistics of the laptops and all the accessories. So for us, it's multiple teams. I mean, the hiring have done a great job, Fania, of bringing on finding these 65 people from all parts of Europe, and the caliber is really good. But yeah, that logistic piece is challenging, because as I said, often we have to ship laptops to Spain and Portugal and Holland and the Nordics, with instructions as well. With you know, we use a QR code, so they scan the QR code from their mobile phone, and it gives them self-help instructions to set up. So that's just, and we also give printed out version of the instructions to set up the laptop.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Holly's saying here that she doesn't feel it's appropriate to ask IT to do the welcome pack. So I think, you know, it's like having your different groups for doing the different functions kind of thing.
No, IT will push back on that.
I'm just going to do the FaceTime call with the VGA cables. Like, I don't want to do anything else.
So welcome packs are a lovely idea. If you can't to include it, you can just a little note to say thinking of you, you know.
That kind of stuff. Actually, sorry, Cathal, go on.
You on.
I know, just Naomi's actually just asked what you typically include in those welcome packs.
So even just a letter, and like a name badge or something like that, a little bit something branded. We have a storeroom in the office, you know, full of kind of merchandise that we typically give out, but I haven't been able to access the office, so I can't give out welcome like laptop bags and mugs and things like that. I can't physically do that, so we just literally do give a letter and maybe a small piece of merchandise if we can, you know. And I'm also thinking of doing something for Christmas, by the way, so but I'll keep that myself.
Any potential onboarding for IBM, it's like, keep it under wraps for now.
yeah. That's exciting. Christmas,
isn't it, Cathal? Exciting.
So just thinking, Jeff, different, if you're hiring for different skills, we'll say, right, different roles, does the approach need to change? Or do you dial up one area more than another area if it's a certain sort of a skill or a role? Or
you mean in the training program? Yeah. So we do hire mostly salespeople, but it's different types of sales: business development, account management, customer success management, also technical. We also hire technical roles. But our approach really is an induction overall into the company. So it doesn't matter what role you're doing. We give you an overview of the company. Something that we haven't spoke about, like in any multinational, the processes are complex often. And the best way to learn the job up to now, when I joined the company, was to literally sit beside someone who'd done the job before and to shadow them and to ask them lots of questions. So that's all been removed. We can't do that anymore. So that's been a huge challenge for us, is to understanding getting the understanding of the processes and giving that over to the new hires. But that's more on the job learning and training, and that comes in with time and probably takes much longer with virtual communications.
And Andy asks, Jeff, so how do you encourage introverts in terms of how do you encourage their voice virtually? Is there anything specifically you do around that? Or
I think that's a good question. I think it's up to the facilitator to try to direct certain questions maybe to everybody in the group, regardless if you're introvert or an extrovert. So if you keep hearing from the extroverts the same voices in terms of discussion, as a facilitator, you might have to say, Cathal, what do you think about this particular topic, or any thoughts here? So I think that's a facilitation piece to try and include the whole of the group rather than just hearing from the exact same voices. And things like design thinking virtually as well. That's an actual exercise for share of voice. So everyone's voice is heard in design thinking. It's not just one. So I think that it's definitely a facilitator thing to do.
Okay. Yeah. Tom asks Jeff, you spoke about taking the learnings every few months and maybe making some small improvements. Any tools or platforms that you use to gather in those learnings from people?
Oh, I think there's plenty of them. We use an internal questionnaire that's online. We generally get people, the new hires, to fill out the evaluation form before they even leave the class, because the drop off is severe when people leave the class. But there's Survey Monkey, and there's lots of different tools really. If you just Google them, Cathal, there's lots of different free tools that you can use. I'd say to you, keep your evaluation short, maybe 10 questions. But yeah, I think one's called Survey Monkey, Survey Gizmo. They're great tools and they're free to use. So they're great.
Yeah. Okay. There's definitely interest, Jeff, in this kind of, the blended approach and the various different formats. We've got questions around, how do you showcase culture without it being another Zoom call? And, is there a little bit around, so if you're doing something like project training, is it self-learning and then discussion? So I guess any further bits from you around that kind of, the various approaches that you guys are using?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, sometimes when we show videos, there's a lag, and there's a lag on someone else's as well. So videos are hard to show as well virtually, I would say. So sometimes, as I said, it might be a case of giving people some time in the day, have a look at this video, have a look at this training program, have a look at this white paper, and then come back and let's discuss it as a group, I just really encourage people to think about the format of the learning. So if your default is to replicate the face-to-face version of that training, say product training, then take a step back. As someone said to me, go on the balcony and have a top-down view. There's another buzzword for you.
Buzzword, yeah.
But honestly, take a step back and say, are people really going to digest 45 minutes of product training in this environment with just a PowerPoint deck? So there's lots of different things you can do. You can break up, you can do a team activity. You can say, right, let me design a team activity and get people to work in small teams. They can use their own Zoom link and small teams, and then come back and share with the wider group. That really works well as well. It's the kind of small team work for maybe 30 minutes, and then come back and have a group discussion. And I tell you, unless you're doing something really technical, guys, a lot of the information that we're given certainly is common sense, but you're giving people the time to have a think about a topic rather than just telling them messages, So product training is probably a bit more difficult, Fania, definitely.
Yeah.
But believe me, if you think about it, there are different formats you can use.
Yeah, brilliant. I think we're probably going to go for 3 more, and then we might wrap up the questions coming in. So people really love this idea of your subject matter experts. I know when we were chatting about this and you talked about SMEs, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then it was a subject matter expert, not a small medium enterprise. And wondering, is there almost like a template that you give them? Is it them chatting about their departments, or is it broader than that? Is it their version of events or a wider culture piece? How do you run those?
Good question. Yeah. So the subject matter experts that we bring in, by the way, aren't trainers. They're not trainers. They're not learning designers or anything like that. They're literally salespeople or technical people working in their particular job. And they're talking about their passion. So maybe someone comes in and talks about security, or someone comes in and talks about data and emerging technologies. So we just challenge them. Again, we challenge them and say, listen, do you need to show, by the way, you haven't got an hour anymore, it's 25 minutes. So that's the new kind of new format. And for that 25 minutes, do you really need to show your whole PowerPoint deck, or can you actually tell a story Can you tell a personal experience of when you joined the company and how your career has evolved? And then show a little bit maybe about your business unit overview. I had one guy recently that was a subject matter expert, and he's a really good speaker, but his approach for the 45 minutes was to go really deep and technical into hybrid cloud. And I said, you can forget about 95% of that, to be honest with you. Tell people, because I knew him, and I said, tell people how you started in the company and how you've evolved, all your different roles. People will find that much more interesting. And then a little bit about information about hybrid cloud and some further information that they can research themselves if they're interested,
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. And this idea of, again, it's educated and informing versus what's the other stuff, what are the other elements that they're not going to get from, you not being there, whatever it might be. Yeah. So question from Joe, and Joe's wondering, how do you integrate the work connection and belonging onboarding you've spoken about with social inclusion and kind of, healthy workplace mindset, kind of the mental piece, the physical piece. So yeah, I suppose balancing that kind of, making sure they're looking after themselves and then doing that kind of belonging piece as well. Any kind of practices or anything that you think has landed well with new hires that way?
What's the question?
Yeah, so she's asking, how do you integrate the work connection and belonging onboarding that you've already spoken about with social inclusion and healthy workplace mindset? So kind of mental health, physical health, that kind of stuff. Is there any kind of focus on that? Yeah.
So I have the new hires for 7 days, and then they go into their teams and they do on the job training. So I think in the 7 days we're inclusive, and during breaks, or I would give them an hour break for lunch, I'd often say, get outside, go for a little walk, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out. So there's kind of positive message in that sense. And then maybe outside of the training program, maybe the pledge helps. Maybe having small connection calls. Most teams have connection calls every day in their little sub teams, but I think it's really important, to have respect for people, to look after themselves,
Yeah, brilliant. That the work from home pledge, can people find it anywhere, Jeff, or is it?
Yeah, you can Google it. I think it's IBM work from home COVID pledge, and I have it behind me here. And print it out, and they can Google it and print it off if they want, and other companies can take and make changes as necessary.
Yeah, it's one of the things that actually Colin and I were chatting about last night, and it's one of these things of this isn't the way to do it, but it is a way to do it, right? So none of these things are a direct copy and paste exercise, but if somebody can learn a bit from what you guys have got in there. Yeah. Okay, so the kind of the last, I know there are some more, but I'm gonna wrap it up into kind of the last focus seems to be looking to this kind of longer term piece. So do you find that you're retaining those new hires? How does that look like beyond the 7 days? And then how do we keep that kind of culture alive, I suppose, moving forward? Well,
listen, it's early days for retention at the moment. I've given you 65 hires over since March. No one's left, but that's probably more that's more probably due to the economic situation that we find ourselves in rather than anything else. But I think if you give them a positive experience when they start the company and support them all the way along, because it's a very difficult time to be joining a company at the moment. You're not, as I said, you're not doing any on-the-job shadowing. Everything has to be organized and orchestrated in terms of calls. I've got a question, so I'm going to have to organize a call or a Zoom call. So it's about that support after the initial induction piece, and getting together. So so hopefully we'll. But I said I'm really super impressed with the people that we have hired, because they're all from different cultures, different backgrounds, and but I think the support ongoing is how we keep them, keep them interested,
Yeah. And this idea of you've created your feedback loops and your learning loops, so you guys are able to figure out, okay, actually this now isn't working and we may need to adapt that, and making those kind of changes.
So important. We do these evaluation reports every single month in every single class, and some of the best ideas have actually generated from the previous classes, previous new hires. Have you thought about doing this, or have you thought about shortening the days or mixing the days up a little bit,
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was like a quick fire round of questions. They just they kept coming there, but no, really, really appreciate you taking the time to kind of take those on and take people through your current approach. Cathal, I'll hand back over to you.
Thanks, Sonia. So it's the time has gone really fast.
Yes.
Jeff, I want to say just thank you very much. It's not just the time that you spent with us on this call, it's the preparation time. It's the getting somebody in to put the bookshelf up really quickly in the background.
Yes, that was a big job this morning.
Yeah, well, it looks really good.
I was up at 6 doing that.
Yeah, well, it looks great. Now, hopefully it's nailed to the wall securely.
Yeah.
No accidents happen, right? But look, your passion around communication, storytelling, really strongly, and I think IBM are really lucky to have you. It's clear you sort of take an empathetic approach to the new hires and the work you do.
Thank you very much for saying that. That's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, Jeff. And look, we started on buzzwords, and in one sentence we said, go to the balcony, take a step back, and have a bird's eye view. So that's a sentence of buzzwords, which is fantastic. But Jeff, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Carl. I really enjoyed it. And hi, everyone. And I think my dad's looking in. So hi, Dad.
Oh.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much. Look, so much gratitude coming in. Thanks, Septa, Anya, Tom, Joe. Thanks, guys. I really enjoyed that. It's really especially reinforcing this idea of connection. To what everyone's saying is really insightful. So thanks so much, Jeff. And thanks everybody for being with us today. And yeah, okay, to finish on the buzzwords, stay safe in these unusual and strange times. Happy Blur's Day. It's all very unprecedented. So we'll look at that. Okay.
Thanks,
thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.